I don't think I've met a single person who has told me the year 2022 was an easy year. Everything flew by, so much fun, and I had no challenges. In fact, I heard the opposite. Everyone that I talked to has told me how it was such a challenging year, a year of growth, a year of change, so many different things coming up. And that was my experience as well. There was a lot of change this year. And there's a lot of things going on inside of the business and in my personal life that are the exact opposite of where I was at the end of 2021. Everything from team members to business model, to the way revenue comes in, to how the team shows up, to how I show up, to where I'm living has all changed in 2022. It was a very chaotic year with a lot of changes and a lot of things that I didn't expect to have happen. And so with that, there was a lot of really great lessons and growth opportunities. And I'm so grateful for the year 2022 because of those challenges. It has allowed me to discover so many really cool things. And I can't wait to share those with you in this episode. Now, I'm going to break down 8 of the most powerful ones. There was a lot more than just these 8, but I want to share these with you with the intention of hopefully giving you some clarity on things inside of your business. Maybe you went through the same challenges. Maybe you didn't. Maybe the lessons I've learned will help you navigate some of the things in your business. So I'm really excited for this episode. If you're excited, well, keep on listening.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we have a year-end episode, which I like to do every year, where we talk about some of the biggest lessons I've learned throughout the year running a business. Maybe we'll talk about some of the personal life stuff as well, because it is all intertwined. But, I think we can all agree that 2022 was a pretty chaotic year for a lot of people. I don't know if I've ever met anyone who's like, 2022 is like simple and easy. I mean, we're coming off of all the crazy COVID stuff, everything going on. It feels like, depending on where you live, got pretty crazy for you. Even if you lived in a place that was pretty calm, I know a lot of people are having disruptions in their personal life. Just a lot of change seems to be happening. And anytime there's change, it brings up so much stuff for so many people. And a lot of things came up for us this year. We had a lot of different things where we are in a completely different business model or moving into a completely different business model that we've never tried before, which is high ticket evergreen off of launching. We had some key team members leave. I personally moved out of California, where I've lived my entire life, into a brand new town, Arizona, or Flagstaff, Arizona. We've also experienced a lot of different things inside the business, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But it left me with a lot of really great lessons that I learned in 2022. And it has made me so much stronger, where like things come up in my life. I'm like, it's not a big deal. Who cares? Because we've gone through so much. It's like you get stretched so much that you go back to these things that you used to worry about. And you're like, why in the heck did I ever worry about that? So 2022 has been a huge blessing for me in that way, because it's given me so much more personal power, so much more calmness in my internal state, and more. So we are also headed into an evolution, which is why we've been talking so much about webinars and getting DMs in your inbox and all of this stuff. And so there's just so much change, like, I don't know, honestly, if I recognize very much of anything now today, when we look back at the end of 2021. Like, I think there's so many things that are different, just like in my life. And I'm sure when you look back at your life, it's the same thing. So let's dive in. Let's get right into the very first lesson that what I did for this episode is I basically just sat down and I just silenced the mind. And I said, let these lessons appear as they need to appear. And I came up with 8. And I'm just going to go in order of how they appeared in my head. So here we go. The first lesson that I learned or got a different perspective, awareness, or appreciation for in 2022 is that there's nothing wrong with staying where you're at. There's nothing wrong with staying where you're at. And I'm talking about more in a revenue sense inside of a company, but I just mean like where you're at in your journey, there's no problem with being there. And I think that a lot of the times, especially when it gets comes to business, we get so wrapped up in like, I need more, we need to be growing, I need more revenue, I need more hiring, I need more, 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 more. And we continue to think that we should be growing, should be growing. And the thing that that leads to is, especially if you're not careful, you're not delegating, you're not bringing on the right people, is that it just consumes more of your time. And even if you do bring on the right people, it's going to consume more of your time. And so what I've realized is like over the last 8, 9 years of building a business, for me, it's always been like, let's do more. Let's do more. How do we grow? How do we increase revenue? Da, 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 all of this stuff. And right at the beginning of 2020, I started to kind of slow down a little bit, but especially 2021. 2021 and 2022 for me, revenue wise, is actually almost the same amount of revenue. And 2021 and 2022, actually in 2022, I might have done a little bit less revenue, but we were able to increase profit a little bit more. So profit is pretty much the same, but I think we did around 2.2 or sorry, 2.5, 2.4, something like that. I don't remember the exact number, a million in revenue in 2021. We're on pace to do, I don't know, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, somewhere in there for 2022. Just depends on how this month wraps up, and filming this in the beginning of December. But here's the thing is that in 2021, in the majority of 2022, I didn't really work that much. And especially with the move and moving to California, packing up their house, doing all this stuff, adjusting, exploring the town, being there for my kids, my family, my wife, and all this stuff. I didn't really have the time to. And to be honest with you, I just didn't have the desire or the will to really jump into business and be like, let's grow this and let's do this and let's da 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 da. It's just like my personal life and things it was just too much. There's so much going on that I'm like, I just didn't have the energy. And to be honest with you, I just didn't have the motivation to be in the business. And what's great is we had built the business at like a machine, and we got it to a point where it ran without me, and it didn't really need me all that much. And I was maybe working, I don't know, 10 hours a week or something like that, a lot in 2021, 2022, especially when we first moved here. And I remember sitting there going, I first feeling like really almost like guilty, or like I should be working on the business, growing the business, doing all this stuff. And I remember getting to this moment where I was like, I grew the business so that I didn't have to be in the business. And every time I grow it, it means we break systems, we break process, we start hiring, we start testing and changing things. And I'm like, it just requires so much energy. And I remember thinking like, man, if I just did $2.5 million a year for the rest of my life in revenue, and we had the profit that we have, I'm like, and I work 10 hours a week, I'm like, I literally don't care. I don't want to get wrapped up in this whole hustle culture, build, build, build. Look at everyone else. Everyone else is doing it. So I just don't care. I'm like, I'm so happy. I'm like, I wake up whenever I want, minus kids coming in and waking us up, but like relatively do what I want, when I want, go where I want. I'm like, we've achieved everything we wanted to achieve. And we've achieved everything we set out to achieve when we first started a business. And so for about 1.5 to 2 years, well, closer to 1.5 years, I just enjoyed it. And I just didn't care about growing it. And I didn't care about, trying to keep up with the Joneses or keep up with someone else or do whatever. I'm like, we built something and it works. And even my employees didn't have to work all that much. And so it was just a great, great time. And like, yeah, a lot of things are going on in my personal life, but I didn't have to really worry about the business, and I just enjoyed it. And I just got to this point where I just was able to pull myself out of the tornado or the bubble or the world and just be like, look, this is amazing. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to enjoy staying here. And I'm just going to live my life without this feeling of constantly having to grow, grow, grow. Because every time we grow, it just creates more problems. And so I just started to realize like, enjoy your life. don't get so wrapped up in business and growth that you forget to actually live. And it's not that I wasn't living, it's that if I didn't need to work 40 hours a week, then why was I working 40 hours a week? It makes no sense. I think, again, sometimes we just get into this habit of and feeling that if we're not putting in those 8 hours, then we are not working to our full potential, or we are not working hard enough, or we're not hustling hard enough. So that was lesson number one, is that it's totally fine to be where you're at revenue wise. And it's okay to not have this huge desire all the time to grow, and to expand and build the audience and build all that stuff. And ironically, what's happened during that time is we actually grew our audience and all that stuff, even when I wasn't really working that much. And that actually leads me to lesson number two, is that when it is time to grow and it is time to evolve and it is time to move on, the universe will let you know. So if you're like, well, I don't know if I should take the time off or relax a little bit, I'm just going to say the answer probably almost all the time is, yeah, go ahead. If you're feeling like you should relax and take a break, then go relax and go take a break. The world's not going to end and you're going to be totally fine. And it probably is a sign that you need it. However, when it is time for you to get your butt back into gear, the universe will let you know. And for me, this happens roughly around July of 2022, all the way up till September. So it was like July, August. It was like a 3-month period where the universe was basically like, all right, Brandon, time to buckle up, get going again. Time to evolve. You've had a year and a half of like just having fun, living life. Let's go. The world needs you. It's time to get your butt going. And so if you're sitting there wondering, well, how do I know when it's time to go back to work? Trust me, the universe will let you know. Because what happened to me is Taylor ended up leaving. And for those of you who didn't know, she was our integrator for the last 4 years. And so she came onto the business right when I created the Video Forex Effect, was $40,000 in debt. And she basically helped me build the company to where it is today. And then in July, she got another job offer that she couldn't turn down. She took the job offer. And for me at first, I was like, oh, wow, okay. Can't really do this rest period anymore. It's time to get back to work. So I met with the team and we started figuring out a plan and all this stuff. And we went into our launch, and we did our launch in August, September. And the launch wasn't our best launch. Actually, it was probably one of our worst performing launches that we've seen in the last 3 to 4 years. When we look at conversion rates and stuff like that, it just didn't perform. And, to be honest with you, a lot of the people in the space are actually seeing very similar results right now, where launching isn't producing results like it used to. That doesn't mean to say launching doesn't work. I think it absolutely works. And I think it's a great business model. However, what I think is going on is that the environment in which we're launching is starting to change. I think buying behavior is starting to shift. We're also seeing people like during the recession and inflation holding on to money, not buying as easily, stuff like that. I think is what's happening. But within 3-month period, I went from like, cool, like we're doing $2.5 million a year. I'm not really working that much. We're making an impact. We are growing our audience and things are great, to now like the number one key person on the team leaves and we do one of the worst launches conversion wise that we've done in a long time. And we didn't, by the way, with the launch, we didn't change anything. It was the same launch that we did earlier this year that it did $1 million. We did it again and it did way less than that. And so it's the same thing, same process, same whatever, but it just didn't convert very well. So that all happened within a 3-month period. And so for me, that was like the universe going like, all right, cool. You've had your break, you've rested, you've enjoyed your life. There's more for you to do here. There's more purpose. There's more dharma. Let's move on to our next evolution now. And so that's what happened. And so I basically had to buckle up, put my head down, and we are evolving. And that's a lot of the reasons why you guys are probably noticing a lot of changes in our content, our messaging, our webinars, our ads, and they're focusing more on sales and profitable messaging, because that's our next evolution is talking about that. And again, the universe will line things up to move you into your purpose should you choose to listen to it. Okay. So that's lesson number 2. Lesson number 3 is that environments change and you have to recognize that and you have to adapt to that. And so, this going back to the universe will let you know when it's time to change. Well, when we had Taylor leave and we had the launch going on, I had to look at like what changed? Like what has changed in the last 6 months? Because we just launched, 6 months ago and we did $1 million launch. What changed since then? And we started to look at the data. And so you have to understand is that when there's a lot of change going on in the world, which we've been seeing, the last 2 years, it's going to cause a lot of change to your industry, to your niche, to the environment of where your business is living and breathing and operating. And if you don't see those changes or you recognize those environment changes and you don't adapt to them, well, you're going to be in trouble. And so what we started to do is like look at what is the data telling us. And we found something very, very interesting that had happened. When we did our $1 million launch 6 months earlier, so this was like, April, May, no, March, April probably of 2022. We did the $1 million launch, but every time we would launch over the last 2 or 3 years, we would have a 3-month runway, which means that for 3 months, we were essentially launching and building momentum and building a warm audience and all of this stuff. We'd have this long runway where we would start quiz ads in January and get people to opt in and be on our list. And then in February, we would start doing like mini workshops with no pitch, warm people up, build an audience. And then we would move them all into our big master your messaging 3-day event. And then we would open up cart after that. So we did the same thing. We started our launch in like July, August, started building momentum, getting our runway going. And we probably spent, I don't know, let's just maybe $50,000 in runway ads. So getting people opted in and things like that. Well, when we used to look back in our data, we would have a huge portion of our sales come in from people during the runway or from a past launch. And so what we started to realize is that, cool, even if we don't sell anyone on this launch, maybe they'll buy on the next one. But also if we can get people warmed up 2-3 months in advance, a lot of them actually become buyers. And a huge percentage of our buyers were people that have entered our runway a month or two before we actually even did our big main event. Well, that wasn't the case in this last launch. And so we started to see buying behavior started to change. And it was, I can't remember if it was 80 or 90, but it's 80 to 90% of the people who purchased in our last launch entered the launch in the last 2 weeks. And most of them were cold traffic. What this means is that people weren't waiting a month or 2 months to buy anymore. They weren't waiting and getting in the runway and living in It's like we hit a pain point. They wanted to solve the pain point. They wanted to buy now. So what we started to realize is that the buying behavior of our audience and people entering our launches had shifted in 6 months. And I don't know why it shifted, but it did. And I don't need to know why it shifted in order to adapt to it. But it shifted, it changed. And so we started to realize that a lot of these people who were buying started to change, but also the amount of time they needed to buy changed. But what was also very interesting is that the majority of the sales that came in our regular program, NGM, were pay in fulls. We've never seen that many pay in fulls come in before. The other thing that was very interesting is like 30 to 40% of our sales were on our high ticket, higher level program. And we had changed that offer around on this last launch. Our offer for our highest level program used to be $16,000 for a year. I ended up changing it to $8,000 for 6 months. A much easier price point, a much quicker program to start getting your messaging dialed in and things like that. And it also helps us produce better results. We started to realize that when we give someone 12 months to go through something, they will take 12 months to go through it. When we give someone 6 months to go through something, they will take 6 months to go through it. And so we're starting to see that our students are getting faster results, moving it down. What was interesting is that we saw a huge percentage of our customers pay in full and go to higher ticket. And a lot of those people had never heard of us 2 weeks prior to our big main 3-day event. So a lot of them were all cold traffic. And so we started to realize, and that was one of the indicators to us, is like, hey, we've been talking about this evergreen thing for so long. Maybe it's time to actually go evergreen. Because if we can get, 100 people, or I don't know how many people it was, to buy a $3,000 or $8,000 program in 2 weeks, why can't we just replicate that process over and over and over and over again every week or every 2 weeks? And now we're doing what we just did in this launch every week or two. And so now we're working on building out an evergreen process, making NGM Plus, which is $8,000 for 6 months, our main offer, our main program. And that all happened because we're paying attention to the environment change, the buying behavior change, and we're adapting to it. And I think a lot of people just get stuck in the way they do things, and they find success, and then they stick with it, and then it no longer works. And then they try to do it again and spend more ad spend and make small changes. But we have to look at what's actually going on inside of the space in the industry. And so the universe told me, look, I'm going to create some problems for you so that you can wake up, get your butt back into gear. You can start putting pieces together. You can figure it out. You can adapt to the change. And that's what we did. So that was lesson number 3, is that environments change and you have to recognize it and you have to adapt. For us, we looked at a lot of the data on how to adapt. Lesson number 4, which also stems from lesson number 2. So lesson number 2, just to remind you, was that the universe will wake you up or move you when it's time for you to be woken up or to move. And because of that, I had to look at environmental changes, which were like to the space, which was number 3. Lesson number 4 is that you have to let your team have responsibility, feel pressure, and give them the chance to actually grow. And so when Taylor was here inside the company, I couldn't have built what we built without her and without her support. I couldn't have taken as much time off as I did without her. Taylor was a vital member of the team, probably the number one most vital member of the team. And like the person by my side helping grow the company to where it was. But what was really interesting is that when she ended up leaving, I had to go through this process of, do I hire another integrator? Do we try to manage what we have just with the team that we have? And Taylor had done such a great job bringing the team up to handle certain things where, Brittany on the team knew how to run a launch because she had worked underneath Taylor for so many years. And so Brittany finally got the chance to step up and do this on her own without having Taylor there to help. And, Julie, who does everything after the sale, same thing. Matt on our team, same thing. And so what I ended up doing is making a decision to not hire another integrator. And the reason why I made that decision was because I don't want to rush into hiring an integrator. That's such a vital role, and someone that has worked so closely with me that I just don't want to rush into just finding some random person or someone who offers the help or someone who filled out an application. I didn't know what that process looked like. I just knew I didn't want to rush into it. I also knew that our workload at the point of Taylor leaving wasn't really all that much. And we were moving into another launch that we've done a million times. And Brittany could manage it all, even though that would be a new experience for her. So I didn't think we needed an integrator, to be honest with you. And so I remember sitting down with the team and I told the team, I'm not going to hire another integrator now. What I want to do is divide the company into like 3 different areas or 4 different areas or whatever it ended up being. And I want each of you to act as the integrator of your area or your field within the company. So I said to Julie, Julie, you run the back end. So this means customer support, different promotions we do to move people up to different programs, all the coaching calls, working with the coaches, everything after the sale. That's what Julie's responsible for. And so I told Julie, you're the integrator for this department. That's what you're in charge of. So this means running it, managing it, being responsible to let us know when we need more team or support or systems. You're the one who's the integrator here. And I said to Matt, you're the director of growth, you're the integrator, you're integrating growth. And so all our numbers, our revenue, our marketing, production, that's all on you. You're the integrator here. And then I said to Brittany's job is the podcast and managing the podcast and also running our launches and a lot of our tech as well. And so she's kind of like that mini integrator with that, but she also is working underneath Matt, but she has her own little department. And so what we did is we divided the company into mini integrators. And so what this did is it allowed the people on my team where that when they would normally depend on just going to Taylor for something, they had to figure it out themselves. And when it came to Taylor to making a decision for them or helping them make a decision, she wasn't there anymore. They had to make their own decisions. And so what we realized is that point in time in having an integrator, it actually stopped the team from exploring and growing within the roles because they became too dependent on an integrator. And so when Taylor left, it forced them to move up. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, the company's running very efficiently right now. Even through all this change, I don't think we need an integrator right now. We probably will at some point, but right now I think we're mostly good. But the amount of growth that I saw from each and every team member and people on the team was unbelievable. Like if I would take the version of Julie and Matt and Brittany now and compare it to the version of Matt, Julie, and Brittany at the end of 2021, it's completely different people. You wouldn't even recognize them. And it's not like they weren't doing a great job before. They're doing an amazing job. But the amount of personal power that they have gained themselves, the amount of confidence they now have, the amount of tasks they can do has gone through the roof. And so, we had our team retreat and Telluride not too long ago as well. And all of them are just like happy. They're exploring their role. They're growing in their role. And with the universe waking me up and having Taylor move on and giving us this launch that didn't work out, I don't know if we would have gotten the team to that place. And so it took these like wake up calls to really get us to be operating at a whole different level. And it just really showed me like when they feel the pressure or they take on more responsibility, they're either going to crumble or they're going to grow. And every single one of them has grown to levels that I didn't know were possible. And it's just a beautiful, amazing thing to see. Okay. Lesson number 5 is a lesson that I've already known, but I just got the blessing of learning it again, which is we are never in control. And so this is why perfectionism is one of the worst killers, momentum killers, messaging killers, marketing killers, because perfectionism comes and stems from a place of needing to control. I want to control people's interpretations. I want to control the way people see this or see me. I want to avoid judgment. And it's just a control issue. And the more you can learn to let go of control, the better you're going to be. Because to be honest with you, you're never in control. You never know what's going to work or how things are going to churn out. I would have never predicted that this year would turn out the way that it did. Like in beginning of 2022, you would have told me, Taylor's not going to be here anymore. You're not going to be launching. You're going to be focusing on a new program an offer that you have never run before. You're going to be in Arizona. You're going to be, and you just list everything that happened. I'm like, I would have never guessed any of this in 1.5 million years. I knew even in the beginning of 2022, January 2022, I knew we wanted to move out of California, but we hadn't even listed our house yet. We haven't really come to a conclusion of where we're going to go. And then here we are, 11 months later and completely moved, been here for 6 months. I mean, it happened fast, actually. Now I think about it, the move, it happened really fast. But we're never in control. And the more that you accept that, the better you're going to be, because when we accept that we aren't in control, it allows us to start working on the skills we need to be able to succeed in a world where we don't have control. I'm going to say that again because it's really important. The more we recognize and accept that we are not in control, the more time, space, and energy we can start to put towards the skills that allow us to grow and succeed in a world where we don't control anything. What I mean by this is we can start to work on our skills of maintaining internal peace in a world of chaos. We start to critically think a little bit more. We start to accept things when they don't go the way we want them to go. We start to be comfortable not knowing, what the future holds, being able to make powerful decisions, better decision making, and knowing that you can't make a wrong decision because you're not in control of anything anyways. And so for me, that was a big lesson I got to learn over and over again. Everything from dealing with the movers to, team members leaving, to launches not working, to overspending in ads, it's just all sorts of stuff. You're just never in control of anything. Okay, number 6. This one's a big one for me. This is, again, another lesson I've already known, and I've known this one for about 4 or 5 years. And I've done it, but I've just had to do it to a whole nother level, especially now that we're evolving the company. Okay. This one might be like one of those oomph moments for some of you. This might be a hard pill to swallow for some of you guys. This comes from my own experience. If you are a thinker and a question asker, it will lead you to some of the most amazing discoveries that will propel your business to levels you've never thought possible. The educational school system, I believe, was designed by Rockefeller in like the early 1900s. I think it was like 1903 or something like that. And he designed it, and there's a quote out there, and the quote goes something like this. I might be butchering it a little bit, but it's something along the lines of, I want to build the educational system not to build thinkers, but to build workers, something along those lines. And I got to be honest, I think the educational system has done a good job of doing that. And where that's really dangerous for us is that we're not workers. We're not employees. We're entrepreneurs. But if you're an entrepreneur who's not going to question things or think freely for yourself or question your own thinking or ask, where does this thinking come from? And recognizing that some of the things that you believe to be true are nothing more than just an authority telling you that's the way it is. And your subconscious just going, yep, that's the truth. The more that you guys can question why we do stuff the way we do it, why do you believe certain things? Why do you have certain indoctrinations? And not even you, but your industry. Why does this industry do it this way? Why do we automatically believe this to be true? Why does the college system teach things this certain way? Because when we start to question things and think for ourselves, we start to discover things that other people won't discover. We'll find solutions to things that people can't find solutions to. You also start to recognize things that people are doing that are causing problems in their life. And this is a huge part of what we teach in our messaging philosophy, is that if you can find something inside of your industry that people just don't think about, they're just too asleep to recognize that this thing that they believe is causing a problem in their life, and you are able to discover that thing, and you wake them up to the fact that this thing is causing a problem in their lives, I promise you, you're never going to have a problem making money. And to give you guys an example, this is what I started to do 4 years ago, is I started to look at the space and go like, what is everyone doing and trying? And what do they believe that just is old and outdated? Because again, industries change, they evolve, environments change, they evolve. And I started to recognize that everyone is saying, give away your best stuff for free, put out a bunch of how-to content, and you'll build a business online. Like, I don't think that's the best advice in this day and age anymore. But that only came up because I questioned it. So why are we doing only how-to content? I started to look around and think like, why is Grant Cardone succeeding? Why is Gary Vaynerchuk succeeding? They're not doing how-to content. You start to ask questions. And so this year has been huge for me to become more of a critical thinker, question more of my thinking, to look around the space and find other things that aren't really working, that used to work. Things like the old way webinars were done, or old messaging copy hacks that used to work that don't work anymore. Start to question those and go, is there a better way? Why do we still think that? So if you're a thinker and you are a question asker, and I think this is only going to become more important the more we move forward, the more discoveries that you're going to start to make. And I will warn you, people will not like it at first. People like comfort. They like to trust authority. People don't like to question things that bring them comfort in their life. And people like knowing that things are a certain way or people believe a certain thing, but it allows you to discover a lot of things. And so what this does is what it does really is when you start to question things inside of your space and you discover like, oh my God, this is not the best way anymore. It will also reveal a lot about where your audience is at. And when you finally make the realization of like, oh my gosh, this may not be the best way anymore, and you recognize, oh my gosh, my audience is over there, and I've made this realization and they haven't, it means you can start to bring the masses of your industry over to this realization. And you're going to be able to do it because you've already made the realization yourself. You've already made the discovery yourself. And you can bring those realizations and those discoveries to them without them having to ask those questions. So when it comes to like content and messaging and growing a business online, hopefully what I've done for you guys is I've given you realizations and aha moments and mind-blowing moments through this podcast that you were able to gain and access without having to critically think to the level of where I was or ask the questions that I was. I did that. I made those discoveries. I'm bringing them to you so you don't have to go through that discovery process. Now, the same way that I did that for you, you guys have the ability to go do that for your audience. But you have to be a critical thinker. You have to start questioning things, and it might be uncomfortable. It might require you looking at yourself and looking through some beliefs and realizing I only believe this because my parents told me to, or I am only believing it because this is what my family believes. It's the only thing that I know. And you have to make a choice. Do I want to continue believing that or not? So this one can be a tough pill to swallow, but if you're a critical thinker, you're a thinker and you ask questions, you ask why we do something inside of our space, I'm promising you, if you do it enough, it will lead to discoveries that no one else has discovered, which allows you to take an audience to those discoveries without them having to do the work that you did. If you do the work, you can bring them there without them having to do it. And then that's what creates mind-blowing aha moments for people. Number 7, when you find a problem that people are resonating with and people are willing to pay to get fixed, they move a lot faster now than they ever have. There is oversaturation going on in the marketplace, meaning there's a ton of content creators. There's a ton of course creators. People are buying. There's so many more people buying courses nowadays, which is great. And it's also a problem. But one of for a lot of people, it's a problem because now you're blending in with a bigger range of people. There's more people out there. You're blending in with more people. So it's a problem. But what's also very interesting about it is people's buying behavior is actually sped up, where we don't need a 3-month runway anymore based off of our last launch. And what we're finding is that people are buying a lot faster when you find the right problem. So when you market and message and broadcast that I solve this specific problem and here's why it's happening, and you show that you demonstrate that you understand the situation, you become relevant to someone, they're willing to move a lot faster than they ever have. And we had people buying our $8,000 program that never heard me before, came in from an ad, attended a live workshop, and then bam, paying us $8,000. That's happening a lot right now. And it's because the buying behavior has shifted. So when you find a problem, and it's a big problem, and when I say big problem, it means it's a problem that people are willing to pay to get fixed, and you show that you know what you're talking about, they pay you a lot faster now. And so that was a very great lesson. And one of the reasons why we're exploring more of this evergreen stuff is because if you have the right messaging, the right problem, and it's the one people are willing to pay for, again, they will become a customer a lot faster. And so a lot of the problems that people are experiencing is that, yeah, you might solve a problem, but some of you are trying to solve a problem that people just aren't willing to pay money for. And that is a big problem. And there's this story I like to tell about this guy who was walking down a sidewalk and he hears a dog whimpering and he looks over and there's this dog and a guy sitting on a porch and the dog's whimpering and the owner of the dog is just sitting there. And the guy on the sidewalk talks to the owner and he says, why is your dog whimpering? And the guy looks at him and he says, well, he's sitting on a nail. And the guy on the sidewalk says, well, why doesn't he just get up and move? And the guy sitting down, the owner of the dog says, well, it doesn't hurt bad enough yet. And that's the thing that a lot of you guys are doing is that you're trying to go to the dog who is sitting on the nail saying like, oh my gosh, pay me $5. I can help you get off the nail. And the dog's looking at you going, doesn't hurt that bad. It doesn't hurt bad enough for me to want to give you $5 to do this. I'm good sitting on the nail. And so a lot of the times, or some of the times, you guys do a webinar or you do something and you can't make any sales, even though there's a ton of people there. Yeah, it could be your messaging, your communication and demand, but it could also lack of demand creation, but it could also be the fact that you chose a problem that people aren't willing to pay you money for. And so lesson number 7 is that we're starting to realize, and we're even in our program, we're doing a lot of testing on problems and we're letting our content tell us what problems are the biggest ones, because we want to find the problems that people are willing to pay for now and willing to pay a lot of money for. So when you find a big enough problem, then your whole business can change. And another like example to give you is if you got a paper cut or you had cancer, and which technically could both use a doctor's help. And the doctor said it's going to cost you $50,000, but I'll take care of whatever you have. Like, are you going to pay the doctor to take care of, are you paying $50,000 to take care of a paper cut? No. Are you going to pay them $50,000 to get rid of this cancer that's going to kill you? Probably, because it's a much bigger problem. And so what we have to do is you have to find and discover what those big problems are. And some of us just don't want to figure out or test problems. Some of us are still focused on here's what I know and here's what I can do. And I'm going to focus on that. And it's like, cool, well, that's great, but let's figure out the problem. Because even focusing more on the knowledge that you have in the solution, that's like a doctor going up to random people and saying like, I can fix cancer. You want to pay me $50,000? I can fix cancer, heal you from cancer. And it's like, you don't even know if they have cancer or not. And so what we start to do is look at like, let's find out what is the biggest problem. Let's not worry about your solution. Let's not worry about your knowledge. Let's figure out what are people dealing with that you can help with. And let's find out which one is the biggest problem for them, because that's going to increase the chances of them becoming a customer. So that's lesson number 7, is that when we found that when you can find out what that is and communicate why it's happening and show an understanding of their situation, you actually will get people DMing you. You'll actually get people contacting you. How do I work with you? You get a lot more momentum in a sales direction from that perspective. All right. Lesson number 8, our final lesson here. Again, there's way more than 8 lessons, but these are just the biggest ones that I've learned this year, is that it was about mental toughness. I have to admit, my version of mental toughness was more about courageousness. It was more about like, I'm just going to go and do it because I'm tough. I'm going to take this risk because I'm tough. I'm going to try this new thing because I'm tough. I'm not going to be weak. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to like not try something. I'm going to like not take the risk. I'm going to just effing go for it. And I'll say, like, it does take some mental toughness to have that. But what I've learned this year is that you can do those things, right? You can still be courageous. You can still take that risk. You can still walk off the cliff and hope the net is going to appear. You can still take that money and spend it on ad spend. You can still go and hire that person that you can't afford yet. Those are all things that you can do. And I still believe it is a form of mental toughness. But what I've learned over this last year, and learned, I mean, through experience, is that mental toughness is so much more than just taking the actions. Yes, mental toughness can help you take actions you're scared of taking. and are required. But mental toughness is more about what is your mental state while doing those things. When you're walking off the net or walking off the cliff and hoping the net is appearing, are you filled with anxiety, fear, worry, or are you walking off the net completely at peace with whatever happens? And when you can get yourself to that spot mentally, you start to become the person that makes better decisions, that can see and recognize things faster, becomes a better leader. And I'll admit, like when Taylor left, I was scared. I was afraid. She ran the entire company. When we had the launch and it didn't do as well as we thought, and we're moving towards this new business model, I was scared. I was worried at first. And I would find these little pockets of fear and worry. And then I would find these little pockets of moving myself out of it and looking at possibility and going like, wow, I'm really excited about this actually. This allowed, like when Taylor left, I'm like, this allows me a chance to like dive back into the company and redo some things and revisit some things and restructure some things. Same thing with the launch. I was like, wow, this allows me to relook at our business model, relook at these things, relook at our marketing. Where are we evolving to? I'm like, this is really exciting. And what I started to realize is that, yeah, I was tough enough to keep moving forward during those moments, but those pockets of when I was excited about it, I made such more powerful content. I made more powerful decision-making. I showed up as a better leader. And there were moments when I let the fear take over. And when you let the fear take over, yeah, you're going to be tough enough to go through that experience, but you're not going to be tough enough to handle it powerfully. And that's kind of what I'm getting at here, is that when we're mentally tough, both in a place of I'm going to take this action and be tough about taking the action that I know I need to take, and also being mentally tough and I'm going to maintain a very calm internal state while doing it, you actually become a very powerful person, and you're now becoming the person who can execute on the thing that you need to execute on. You can see things clearer. And so for me, mental toughness has been about accepting, acknowledging the fear and the worry and the concern, but moving myself right out of it and holding my attention on the peace, the power, the calmness. And that has allowed us to move and navigate this year with a lot of power and excitement. It has allowed my team to really grow into the roles that they're at now. Like if I was constantly worried at every bend and turn and meeting that I had with him, it's like, oh my gosh, guys, I don't know about this. What do you think that's going to do to my team? It's going to fill them with fear and anxiety. Oh my gosh, look, Brandy's worried about these things. Maybe we should be worried about this too. What happens to my job? Blah, blah, blah. But when I'm able to show up with calmness and power and excitement, it's the same thing being brought down to my team. That's how my team's going to start to show up. So mental toughness isn't about doing something and just doing it because you know it's what you need to do. It's about doing it and being mindful and intentional of what state you're at internally while doing it. So those are my top lessons of 2022. If you enjoyed these, let me know which one it is. I can honestly probably do a podcast episode on each one of these. And if there is a podcast episode you would like me to do on one of these topics, just send me a DM, let me know. I'm really appreciate all the feedback we get from you all. On the last episode with the 9 lessons that I learned from my shaman, I actually got a decent amount of DMs from you guys. Let me know you like that. So that feedback is always good. And if you haven't yet, leave us a review on iTunes. Consider it an early Christmas present or New Year's present to me, and I'd be so grateful. So thank you guys for tuning into this episode. I will see you next week on another one. Take care.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested. And thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.